Hi everyone, it's Jerry. Here's a memorable game from 1991 between Nigel Short, playing on the white end, against Jan Timman. Let's see what exactly happened in this game that makes it so famous. E4 by Short, Timman replying with the Alekhine's defense. That knight's given a kick. This often happens. Black is prepared for this. Knows it's coming. Knight d5, d4, and now d6, immediately putting pressure on white center, on this space invader pawn, the one that is in black's camp. This is the hypermodern approach. That's the type of opening black is running with here. The hypermodern approach says, go ahead, build your center, but I will apply pressure to it in short order. So that's what happens in this game. There's a fight over these two central dark squares going on. White can go for some great buildup in this game, namely the four pawns attack, c4 and f4. Not the case in this game. White places an emphasis on rapid development in this one and securing the e5 strong point. Knight f3, g6, bishop c4, knight b6, and white keeps the bishop on this nice long diagonal running from a2 to g8. The g8 square will at some point be occupied by the king, so that can't be so bad to have your bishop opposite the enemy king. Following up, bishop g7, placing pressure on white center. White feels comfortable enough already committing the queen. In general, probably a little bit early to make a queen move, but fully justified here. E2 is a fine post, securing e5. Why am I drawing so much attention to e5? It's because the e5 pawn very often acts as a catalyst for an attack against the black kingside. So this section of the board is what I'm referring to. Why is this so? Well, what is the most efficient defender for black's kingside? And from what square does that most efficient defender stand best on? Well, that piece's name is a knight, and that square is f6, the very square that the e5 pawn controls. Now, a couple of reasons why a knight stands well from f6. Again, just a quick point. There will be no queen quickly coming out in this direction. It very conveniently stops some queen coming out in that direction. Of course, there's a pawn there controlling h5, but it guards a lot of nice squares from f6. It has a maximum number of moves from f6, 8 possibilities. f6 is taken away because of the e5 pawn. And on top of this, we might also say, what more? Well, the king knight has now been converted into a queenside specific piece. Continuing, black continues to put pressure on the white center. Is there a fear of bishop g4 at this point? There isn't. If there was great enough fear at this moment right here, white would play h3. Bishop g4, however, is not yet a threat. So white gets on with castles, and black does the same. Only at this point does white now play h3. This is an important defender of the white center, of the white e5 pawn. Now, if instead of castles, if black went with bishop g4, what's the issue with this? Well, yes, this bishop is pinning the knight, but at the same time the bishop is unprotected. And in this case, that can be taken advantage of. Bishop takes g7, and knight to g5, queen takes bishop next. So, only after black castles do we have h3. Primary function, stop the pin. Secondary function, flight square. However, I don't know if I feel so confident saying that that is a flight square for this game. Continuing, we have a5, a4, d takes e, d takes e, knight d4. The knights are exchanged, and now e5 is struck at twice. White can defend it with now rook to e1. And now we have e6. So e5 has been maintained. This may strike some as a little bit awkward. You know, the light square bishop. What's gonna happen with this guy? Where's he gonna go? Some may think to, let's say, play bishop to f5 and only then play e6, but an issue with that is, well, he's really short on squares now. In fact, he would be trapped with g4, so it's not so easy to deploy this light square bishop in an active way, at least not straight away can we see that happening. Moreover, black does not want to see e6 happen, that e5 pawn running even deeper into black's camp, so that is stopped cold with e6. At the same time, this weakens f6. This is now a hole, and the bishop is pretty much the lone defender for black's king. Knight d2. Where's the queen knight going? Well, the queen knight, white's queen knight, is heading towards the king side, and black's king knight drifted towards the queen side. That's going to factor in. Okay, more pieces are now drifting towards the king side and black's king side, and there's again just that one key defender. So knight d5, knight f3, queen c5, queen e4. Okay, here comes the greatest attacking piece. The queen's looking to sweep over to h4, and then white looks to eliminate dark square bishops, and then key in on these two gaps in black's position, f6 and h6. Black at this point is now sensing danger, offering a queen exchange, something that white declines. In fact, not only is black offering a queen exchange, but black is offering up a pawn at this point. White can, at this stage, capture the knight and then win a pawn. But black would have the bishop pair, and there is some compensation that black would have by giving up that pawn, and the attack is much more difficult to realize now that things have also opened up a little bit more. White declines the pawn offer. White declines also this offer of a queen exchange and plays bishop to c4. And with this is content, is fine with having a damaged queenside structure. This is what happens. This right now is what white is signing up for when the move bishop c4 is played, because what's the follow-up? Knight b6. This bishop is now struck at twice, and white says, go ahead, take my bishop. b3. Ruin my structure. I'm keeping the queens on. Queenside is killed. Terrible structure, double isolated pawns, and an isolated pawn. But white is going for the black king's throat. First, rook to e8. Bishop a3 was a threat, skewering the queen and rook. He only had two options, right? If he goes to d8, white can develop with tempo, so he's just staying clear of that. Yeah, if rook to d8, there's bishop g5, and then if you want to keep the rook on the open file, you'd have to go here, and that's maybe a little bit awkward to do that. Maybe the bishop wants to make use of that square. Anyhow, in the game it was rook to e8. White occupies the open file and interferes with this quick reposition of the light square bishop. So black has to work a little bit harder to get this guy activated, and if he can't move, there's no worry of this guy moving, so how does black complete development here? Notice, white could look to immediately go in for queen h4, bishop h6, but first says, you know what, let me occupy an open file, and by doing so, I'm interfering with what it is black wants to do. It's nice if you combine those two with a move. Improve one of your pieces, and at the same time, prevent what it is your opponent wants to do. Rook to d1 does just that. There will be no bishop to d7. There will also not be b6, because the rook would be hanging. So that's another reason to leave the queen on e4 for just one more move. In the game, queen c5, queen h4 now, b6, bishop to e3. Let's see where the queen is going to go exactly. She has some choices here. She goes to c6. She's now not going to be around to, let's say, control the dark square so easily because of this decision for the bishop to kind of take a pit stop first on e3 and question the queen's post. She's now on c6. She can't run back to f8 so easily. Bishop h6 only now. Only after chasing the queen away from the c5 square do we have white looking to exchange dark square bishops. Black seeing that this is the key defender for the Kingside. I'm going to keep that bishop on, black says. And now we have rook to d8. So what is white looking to do? White's now saying, well, if you don't want to trade bishops, I'm going to look to checkmate you on the back rank, because my bishop from h6 is controlling this flight square. Bishop b7. This isn't any issue. The knight cannot be kicked away from f3. There's no issue on g2 because of this battery. No problem here for white. White now doubles. Last piece in the ball game. At this point, black is, well, what is black thinking? I need that flight square. I need to make sure I don't have an issue on my back rank. If black captures the rook, this is going to be an issue, because at this point, bishop g7, we would now have queen e7. And this is a big problem. Rook takes rook, and eventually we're going to have checkmate. So before any captures are made on d8, in other words, we have black returning to g7 saying, you know what, all right, I think it's best for me to have the dark square bishops off, but still, this is going to be an issue for Team Black. A best move here, rook 8 to d7. White wants to keep pieces on the board. Both of these rooks are active, and both of black's rooks are passive. Notice both are biting at, well, they're just staring at their own pawns. And the white rooks, what do? They control the only open file in the game. And this rook now, from d7, exerts some 7th rank pressure. It feels as if just these two rooks and the bishop feels like their presence isn't even felt here. So what follows is rook to f8, sensing some additional pressure against f7. There was a threat, in fact, to capture the bishop and then give a check on f6 and crash through. So rook to f8 it is. Dark square bishops are exchanged. Rook to d4. So already there's some idea of maybe queen f6. And the rook sweeping in. We have all pieces attacking the black king. Rook to e8. Tough to suggest a good move here for black. If bishop to c8 is played here, this is already running into mate with rook takes f7, rook takes f7, and we have some back rank issue here for black. Eventually, we would have mate. So bishop to c8, not a good option here. First, the rooks are over here. Maybe next, black is looking for bishop to c8. In comes now queen f6 check, king g8, and now h4. So what's the idea with h4? This pawn wants to get to h6, and then queen g7, game over. The dark squares are very weakened, and then as soon as the dark square bishops were exchanged, that's the end result of that dark square bishop exchange. You're really, really weak on the dark squares. So how do you stop this pawn from running up to h6? h5 is pretty much the only way to do it. If you're playing h6, we would still have h5, and if black tries to keep things closed, well, that's dropping h6, and yeah, white's crashing through there. So h4 is met with h5. That creates a couple key weaknesses here, g6 and g5. And so what piece is not playing in this position? And this is what makes this game so cool. There's one piece that's not playing. We got the queen, two rooks, the knight. The last piece, the king. Where's he going? Well, he now sees a path into the black position. You can't get a pawn to h6, but yeah, with a little bit of time, this king is going to sneak up to h6, control g7, and then there's going to be mate on g7. What does black do about this? Unfortunately, there's not much you can do. Rook to c8 is played. If bishop to c8 is played, white can already go in for knight g5. And on bishop takes rook, there's rook f4, and white is crashing through on f7 next, and there's nothing that black can do to stop that. Queen a8, knight takes f7, and there's not going to be any defense here. Rook takes d7, and yeah, this is going to be an issue for Team Black. There's no defense against the pressure against f7 if black goes in for bishop to c8 at this point. Yeah, bishop c8, knight to g5. Too much pressure against f7. Could pitch a rook. That's because these guys are so strong, and the e5 pawn is, again, this e5 pawn was acting as a great catalyst in this game. So let's see how this one finishes up. Rook to c8. White continues. King f3. How can you stop this? Unfortunately, there's a lot of back and forth. Not too much you could do about it. Bishop c8 now tried, but yeah, you're just way too slow by this point. After king to g5, it is at this point that Timman throws in the towel. He resigns. There is no defense. Bishop takes rook here. Well, it's a mate in 2. King h6. Queen g7, mate. Something else? King here. Well, this pawn is now pinned. Queen takes g6. Queen h6. And we can even play king f6 here. Same idea. Queen comes in next to g7. Can only stop mate for one move. Checkmate on g7 next, taking full advantage over the dark squares. That's all for this video. Pretty cool game. It's an old one, an oldie but a goodie. Feel free to leave any feedback to this one. The real key points were the pawn on e5 acting as a catalyst for that kingside attack, and white then looking to eliminate the only kingside defender. Getting rid of the dark square bishops made the dark squares on black's kingside vulnerable, and we saw them, these dark squares, taken full advantage of in this short king walk. Anyhow, that's all for this video. Feel free to leave any feedback in the comment section below. And as always, I hope you got something out of it. That's all for now. Take care. Bye.